Hey guys, welcome back to Werner Farms. So today we're going to continue with the farm tour, but before we get into that, behind me is our Hillsborough dump wagon. Now in previous videos you've heard me talk about this a little bit and what we're going to plan on using this for this year and in future years. So currently we're just working on the gooseneck hitch right now, trying to fix that and get that modified on how we want to utilize it. I'll probably be doing vlogs on this later on this year, so you guys can stay tuned for that. In the meantime, let's go ahead and jump right into today's video. So one thing I didn't get a chance to show you guys in the Farm Tour Part 1 video, in the previous video, was our 1974 4430. Now we bought this practically brand new. I shouldn't say brand new. It did have, I believe, 100 or a couple hundred hours on this when we bought it. So it wasn't totally brand new, but we can pretty well say it was brand new. I believe we also bought the 265 front end loader along with the bucket and the pallet forks. The pallet forks are, I believe, sitting over by the grain bins right now. That's normally where we keep them. The reason why we have so much weight on here, because a lot of you guys are like, my God, that's a lot of weight, especially with the weight rack that we have on the back of this also. Most of the time, this is the tractor we use down when we're taking out woods and stuff, so we have a brush rake on this. Later in the video, I'll show you guys the brush rake over at my place that we use on this. So in the meantime, this will stay here for a little while. I believe we have a little bit of stone over here at the farm that we're going to spread out with it, but for now, let's go ahead and head over to my place and check out all the farm equipment then. Okay, so before we go ahead and go into the shed and I show you guys all the equipment, I'll go ahead and show you everything that's outside before I go ahead and show you guys the inside of the shed then. So real quick, while this is sitting here, this is our 2010 Honda 420 TRX four-wheeler. It does have the electric shift on it, and it has the electric power steering. The only thing I don't like about this four-wheeler is the electric shift. I mean, the electric shift is great, but there are some issues that we have found with it that we don't like at all, especially when the oil change indicator comes on at maybe I think 10 hours or 20 hours before an oil change is due, and it shifts really hard, or sometimes it'll actually lock up into a floating neutral gear. Otherwise, I mean, it's a really nice four-wheeler, but probably my next four-wheeler, if I were ever to buy one again, would probably be a 500 plus cc one, and definitely a manual shift. So here is our Great Plains vertical till. I believe it's 3000 Turbo Max. I believe that's the number of it. This is a 30-foot model. We pull this with our 9400T. We bought this back in 2013, I believe. We did try pulling this with our 4650 last fall. I was actually the one who got to try that for the first time. And probably the only issue was it pulled a little too hard, a little too harder than what we would like. I mean, could the 4650 pull this? Yes. Could it pull it across, say, 100 plus acres? Probably not. It could get the job done real quick if the 9400T was, say, tied up on the auger wagon like it was last fall. But would I recommend pulling it full time with the 4650? Probably not. Just because, yes, our 4650 is turned up to 230 horse, but this needs at least 300 horse to get an ideal job done. So otherwise, probably one of my most favorite pieces of equipment on the farm to use. Makes an ideal seed bed. I don't care what anybody else says. This is probably one of the best tools we use for no-till. Granted, yeah, by utilizing this, are we necessarily no-till? No, but I mean, have they really come out with something called vertical tillage or in-between tillage, you know, that they can officially call vertical tillage? I guess you can, so I guess you could almost say we're vertical tillage, no tillage, but we use this heavily when we're preparing the seed beds in the fall for the spring, and also helping us prepare seed beds for cover crops, and also working cover crop seed into the ground. So I'll probably be doing a lot more vlogs on this spring, so go ahead and watch out for those. Moving on, this is our grater blade that we use on the 4430. And then the rest of this stuff is just miscellaneous, like landscaping blocks, some oil barrels, a fuel tank back over there, a boom for the 4430, just some more weights. And here is the brush rake I was talking about. We actually custom built this, I believe, back in 2006. My dad was the one who fabricated this whole thing, and when we were down at the National Farm Machinery Show, he's always wanted to buy one. But then one time he came home and he decided, you know what, I'm just gonna build one myself. And honestly, this thing is really heavy duty. It's probably one of the best things to use on the 4430 for picking up brush. And we use this thing all the time for when we're taking out woods or just moving simple trees and stuff like that. But otherwise, I mean, it gets the job done. So moving on, here's our more rims and stuff, and tires and pipes and more miscellaneous stuff laying around here. Here is a stump cutter or tree cutter that we have that mounts also on the forks of the 4430. We haven't really used this much. We only well, mostly just because of the excavator that we have now, which I'll probably show you guys the excavator in a future video here real soon. Probably vlog 10 or something like that. I don't know. You guys can watch out for it. And otherwise, that's pretty much it for right here. I'll show you guys what's down here though. Actually, I was mistaken. The forks were actually setting over here from this last weekend when we were doing stuff over here at our place. And so these are the matching forks that go with the 265 front end loader attachment and the loader bucket that goes with it. So there those are. So moving on, we have a pole roller back there. We don't really use that much, but sometimes, you know, like when we're packing down the lane, we'll utilize that. But here in front of us, this is our woods ditch bank mower. We use this a lot in the fall and late summer when we're mowing roads and mowing ditch banks. It would be nice, however, to have a better ditch bank mower, since this thing, I believe, is like 15 to 20 years old. But for now, we're stuck with what we got, and it's not really a priority right now to update that. This is our chisel plow. We haven't chisel plowed ground in like 30 years, I would say. We haven't really, I don't think this has ever moved for like, I don't know, probably 10 years, 12 years. We've just never, it used to sit over by the farm, but I think ever since we moved all the equipment over to our place, this has never really been moved, and plus we've never had a need to use it for. Here is another disc that we have. We have many discs actually. We actually use these a lot. This one is probably our most used one, just for the mere fact of, just because it's just an older style disc and it's pretty much a beater really for us. And we actually mounted some axle weights on here for just more downforce on it. That way we can disc a little bit deeper than what actually it can. So moving on, this is our 5-shank ripper, John Deere 900 ripper. We pull this with the 4650. I don't know if we've ever mounted it on any other tractor, but if you follow me on Instagram, you actually saw me, I ripped some ground, some tomato ground that we actually rented out to a guy, a local neighbor that actually grows tomatoes. And no complaints about it really. I mean, we don't have a rock issue really. So on a couple of fields we do have a couple of rock spots, but really they're deep enough that it's not really an issue for us really for ripping ground or even planting or cutting beans or anything. So we don't roll our beans. Moving on, this is another disc that we have, another John Deere disc. Not much to say about it really, you know, just another disc. Moving on, down there is our planter trailer. We actually used to have a planter that mounted on a trailer to transport it. And also down there on top of it, you guys can't really see it, but I really don't want to walk all the way down there just because it's really cold out. But anyways, that is a disc plow. Now really in our area, those disc plows are kind of rare, just for the mere fact there wasn't a lot of disc plows in our area to begin with back then. But we bought that along with the Unstyled G that I showed you back in Farm Tour Part 1 and the 530, which I'll show you later, back in the spring of 2016 over by Hamlet, Indiana, which is not too far from us. But we figured since it went cheap enough, or the guy went cheap enough on it, that we'll buy it. And, you know, maybe we'll restore it and keep it, but there always is a possibility that we might just sell it just for the mere fact of, you know, it's rare in our area and somebody might pay a little bit more than what we paid for it just because it's something that you don't really see in our area. So pictured here is our cold storage shed. It's 72 by 152. This was built back in 2008. I'm not going to discuss why it was built. It's kind of just a personal private issue that I'm not really going to discuss. We do have a double set of doors on the north, double set of doors here on the facing the east, and a side door here also on the east side, just for some smaller pieces of equipment that we'll store in there. But it's completely open. No dividers in there or anything. It's just a completely open cold storage shed. So I'll go ahead and open up all the doors and show you guys all the equipment in there then. Okay, so starting on the north side of the shed here. Here's the 530 that we bought, along with that Unstyled G and that disc plow. We believe either it's a 1958 or 1959. This isn't yellow John Deere paint. This is the yellow primer. The guy did not finish restoring it, so we ended up restoring and finishing up all the engine work on it. So we actually have it mechanically running. It runs and drives great. Really all it needs now is painted, so I have no idea when we're actually going to finish this, but we'll probably do that when we do probably the dump wagon, along with maybe when we do the Unstyled G as well, and as well as my 630, which is sitting right over there as well, which we actually just replaced the grill screens this past winter. If you guys were following me on Instagram, you probably saw that. And we believe this is a 1959, I believe, if I remember right, off the serial number. But so moving on, sitting right here on this concrete pad, we just store some garden stuff along with the gator and the lawnmower. So starting here is just our John Deere pull type trailer, along with another larger wagon. I believe this might be a John Deere wagon, otherwise this might just be a custom built wagon that we bought from somebody. We actually built this recently, this last year actually. We built this custom pull type sprayer that we can pull with the 455 lawnmower pictured in or videoed in the last video in the farm tour. And we can also hook this up to the John Deere X534 lawnmower that we actually just bought this last year at an auction. This is a 2016 or 2017, I believe, but since it went extremely cheap at an auction, we ended up buying that recently. So we'll actually keep this mower over here instead of bringing the Gravely over here to mow this yard. I believe this is a 2008 John Deere Gator TX. Not too much to say about it, really. I mean, we just use this all the time and drive this wherever we essentially want to go without taking the trucks. So moving on over here, this is our 2001 John Deere 9650 STS Combine. We bought this used. The first owner that had this, I believe, was from Winnemac. And so it hasn't gone too far. I believe this almost has 5,000 hours on it though, so it's high time for a new combine, but the grain market is not looking forward, or not looking our way any way at all. I mean, yeah, there was a little bit of a boost, but not enough for us to go out and spend $180,000 on a decent, somewhat low hour, 1,000-hour range combine. Probably what I would replace this with would be an S680. I wouldn't probably, I mean, I know the ideal replacement to this, in order to actually replace this specific model, would be an S660 probably, or an S650. But due to, I know how much better the S680s are, I would actually go with the S680 just because I know how much corn we'd be running, and I know how much better an S680 and an S670 performs in corn. And just because, you know, higher, a bigger grain tank along with the higher speed unload auger and all the other deluxe features that come with, you know, a higher and more expensive model combine. So moving on, this is our 1998 John Deere planter, 1770 Conservation Edition, with Max-Emerge Plus row units on it. Not too much to say about this, except we run a lot of precision stuff on this, and you guys mostly know now that we run the Yetter fertilizer injectors on this, along with the precision row cleaners on this, and the Air Force airbags, along with the furrow row cruisers and a change rag to close the furrow. What would I like to do to this, or would I ever get a new planter? I probably would not want to get a different planter for a long time. One purpose is just because I like how this planter is completely set up versus the center field, due to the center fields having issues with compaction. Now this, it's completely spread out and weight's evenly distributed across the whole entire planter. I actually did a video on talking about downforce on the planter back in vlog, I believe 6, which came out on Wednesday of last week. I would like to put the precision furrow jet attachments on here along with the V drives, just to better monitor our fertilizer and also our population. So not too much else to say about this, but I'll be doing a lot more videos on this, and also talking about our fertilizer setup and what we're doing for fertilizer, along with the micronutrients and everything that go down with the seed. So moving on, this is our HX20 John Deere mower, 20-foot mower, batwing mower. We bought this at a Mower auction. Now, many of you guys in Illinois would know who Mower is. Now, if you guys don't, he's probably one of the biggest auctions in the Midwest, actually, I believe. And we bought this just because we needed a better replacement for our older John Deere mower that we use the chop stalks with. Now, we used the chop stalks up until we bought the vertical till, because we always wanted to utilize some type of vertical tillage just to kind of open up the residue enough so it decomposes quicker and gets that organic matter back into the soil. So not too much else to say about this, except that we probably, I believe, bought this back in 2007. I believe it was fairly new then, but it wasn't brand new. Moving on. Now, you guys will see this a lot more later this year. This is our Agri-Inject fertilizer pump for the pivot. Now, a lot of you guys out west will know exactly what I'm talking about by fertilizer injecting into the pivots. Now, a lot of you guys around in my area or in the north are probably like, what do you mean injecting fertilizer into the pivot? Well, with this, we actually monitor the flow and slowly inject a slow rate or a small rate of fertilizer into the pivot. And we actually run it at probably like a tenth or maybe 2/10 around in a circle, or depending on windshield style or whatever our pivot is styled. And we inject fertilizer into the water and apply it foliarly onto our corn. This has increased our yields tremendously. I don't care what part of the state or what part of the country you're from. I would highly, highly recommend trying this out if you do irrigation at all. Even if you do sub-irrigation or with a pivot, or, you know, I don't care what kind of irrigation you're doing. I would highly, highly recommend trying this out if you guys do irrigation a lot in your area. I'll do a lot more videos on this later. later this year, especially when I'm running around with this and hooking it up to the pivots and running around checking on this also. So check for videos later this year on this. So right next to this is our Kenzie 840 auger wagon. Now, we bought this back in like 2007, I believe, and we originally pulled this with our 4650. Now, the only reason why we quit pulling it with the 4650 just because we were in fear of actually breaking the drawbar because of how hard this thing actually pulled when shifting out in the field, since it's a power shift. So we actually ended up buying, when we bought the 9400T to run on our strip till, which I'll discuss later in this video, we actually put the 9400T on here, and that works great. But I would like to get a different tractor than the 9400T. Ideally an 8R, like an 8345R, or an 8370, or even an 8335R. Just something that's a little bit more economical for us, but I'll discuss that a little bit later. So, neat thing behind this, behind the auger wagon, is we actually were mentioned by Machinery Pete about being one of the highest selling auger wagons at the time, back in like 2006 or 2007, whenever we bought this. Because when we bought this at an auction, Machinery Pete actually mentioned us in one of his posts, talking about how he couldn't believe that somebody would pay this kind of money for an auger wagon. But really, I mean, at the time, this was actually a really nice auger wagon, and you couldn't find one nicer in our area. So, moving on, these are our Agri-Trader hopper trailers. These aren't identical. One's actually slightly taller than the other. This one's actually the one right here, hooked up to the T600 1995 Kenworth semi, the black one. And this one is the shorter one by, I believe, like a couple of inches. There's not too much difference between the two, but just enough that this one actually holds a slight amount more bushels. This one's hooked up to our Freightliner. Neat little history behind the black T600 Kenworth. We actually bought this the same, almost brand new. Not really. In 1995, this semi, shortly after, like I think 6 months after it was on the road, it got totaled. And we actually picked it up from our local wrecker in 1995. So we practically bought it brand new. But it was totaled, completely totaled. So my dad and my grandpa actually restored this semi and put it back together, and I would probably never get rid of this semi for a long, long time. And if you guys follow me on Instagram, we actually redid the rear tandem axles by just putting over fenders on fenders over the top of the axles, you know, just to kind of protect the underside and the sides of the hopper trailer a little bit better. So not too much to say about the 1993 Freightliner. We actually bought this for a wrecker also. It wasn't totaled, just the guy was actually selling it to the wrecker, and our local wrecker actually turned this deal over to us, actually, and suggested that we buy this, since we were actually in the market of looking for a semi at the time, and we ended up buying that from him. So, in front of here is our Roadrunner header trailer, along with the MacDon 35-foot FD70 Flex Draper grain header. We bought this, I believe, back in 2012, I believe. Now, a lot of you guys in the videos I posted about this last year, like in the farm videos, you guys are like, my God, that's a 40-foot header. How do you guys run that on a 9650? No, this is a 35-foot header. We did actually run a 25-foot John Deere header before this. Anything I would do differently on this, or would I ever buy a different header? No. I love the MacDon header. The MacDon is actually one of the best heads I feel on the market today. Probably the only thing I would change on this is probably put an air reel kit on this, just for the fact you can never go wrong with having air, like an air system on a grain head. They help the beans feed better, and it pays for itself real simply. So Otherwise, I mean, I wouldn't probably ever buy a different header just because the McDon series is actually, I feel, one of the best headers on the market, like what I said. But otherwise, I mean, that's pretty much it for the McDon. Moving on. Now, you guys last year were amazed about this 4230 and what my dad actually did to this back when he first bought this. He bought this back, 15 years ago, back in 1990. Later, when I found out why, he actually made a whole sprayer out of this, which I didn't realize that's what this tractor was actually originally intended for. And this has top air 60-foot air booms on it. He actually bought a high crop assembly for it down in Missouri, I believe. Mounted two 250-gallon tanks on either side of it, and I believe it has a 300-gallon poly tank on the back that we mounted on the 3-point. And that's pretty much it. This is a 1974 4230 with I don't know how many hours on it, a fair amount, I believe. As you can tell, it needs some paint. I don't know what the plan is for that, if we'll ever get that repainted. We actually just repainted the rims on this yellow last year, I believe, sometime. I don't remember, but we do run ITC on this. We don't run auto steer, but we can run ITC on this just because of the way it's set up. We can't run auto steer, but we do have a light bar on it if we ever use it. If we ever really want to use it, really, but otherwise, I mean, we can't really run auto steer on this. So moving on over here, this is our 1959 730. Not too much history about this. We actually just bought this not too I don't know how many years ago, like 15 years ago or so. Behind this is also our air compressor. We bought this 2007, I believe, from a local guy. It's a Jaeger air compressor. If you guys use just the air chuck to clean the combine or just a leaf blower, you guys are missing out. This is the best way to clean a combine. I'll probably do a video on this of us cleaning equipment with this, but with the amount of air that you can get going through that tube and the amount of force or just the PSI coming out of that tube, you can blow easily that combine off real quick. A lot faster than what you can with the air compressor at your shop, probably. Next to this is the just a little Honda engine with a log splitter setup that we have. Nothing too special about that. We actually borrow. It's kind of just between us and my uncle that we use this back and forth, so nothing too special about that. This is our DMI Nutriplacer applicator. It's a 15 shank applicator. I believe we bought this back in the 1990s. Otherwise, nothing special about that. Would I ever get something different? Yeah, I would probably. Not sure really. I haven't really looked into applicators that much just because there's not a lot of maintenance that we do to this. Really, I mean, the only thing that we would want to do is get a better equal distribution setup, kind of like what Yield 360 has, but not for $15,000. If there was something a little bit more economical and that wasn't like 4 times the price of what our applicator actually originally costs, then yeah, we would probably look into it. But really, I mean, I would probably want to be able to put down variable rate nitrogen with the applicator. That would be a nice thing to do, but just haven't really had the money to actually be able to do that. Okay, so I almost forgot to mention this. This is our portable, or our cabinet sandblaster that we actually bought back in, earlier in March. I did a vlog on this a while back. You guys have probably watched that already. If you haven't, go check out vlog number 2. It talks about where we bought this and why we bought this, but this is actually where this is going to stay. So I just thought I'd mention that real quick, just in case if you guys have wondered where we're actually going to put this and how we're going to set it up, really. So That's pretty much it for that. I'll go ahead and jump right back into the farm equipment then. Now, sitting in between our 1976 4630 and the 4230 sprayer setup is our strip till. Now, for a lot of you guys that follow me and have watched the YouTube, you've seen this ad and seen this ad for a long time. Now, if you guys know anybody that wants a 40-foot strip till with strip cat row units with mounted on an Elk Creek caddy on a Hawkins toolbar, can be sold with the cold flow setup, the Henniker cold flow, does not come with a monitor. DM me, message me, call the number that's in the ad. I don't care. Get a hold of me. We want this gone. Asking price is, I believe, $25,000, and without the cold flow setup, it would be $22,500. The only reason why we want to get rid of this, and we haven't strip tilled in 4 or 5 years, I believe it's going on 5. We thought strip tilling would possibly improve our corn yields in our area. Now, we did some research and we thought strip tilling would, but after a couple of years of actually running it, we actually didn't really see much of a yield benefit at all in our area, just because we were running this on very fine sandy soils, and normally you would want to strip till in like heavier clayier soils. But really, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it at all. Nothing at all. I mean, it's pristine, really. What you see is what you get, really. I mean, there's nothing broke, nothing wrong with it at all. Just, it's sat here in the shed for 5 years, and we just actually want to get it out of here just because, well, you know, it's taken up a lot of shed space, and it would just be nice to get it gone just because we haven't used it for 5 years, and we just haven't really seen a need for strip tilling in our area. So, moving on. This is our 1976 4630. This is probably one of my grandpa's favorite tractors, just because they bought this, and actually when John Deere delivered it, they delivered it with a giant red bow on top of this. It was actually pretty funny, I guess, when they delivered this back in 1976. Moving on. This is I believe this is the only piece of equipment that's actually Case IH on here, and I'm not sure, but actually I believe it is Case IH disc. We don't really use it that much, but sometimes when we actually need to disc a larger area, we'll actually pull out the bigger disc and utilize that instead. Here's our cultivator. I believe this is a 40-foot cultivator. We use this actually a lot, mostly just for leveling up tomato fields after they've been chisel plowed or disc ripped, or whatever you want to call that, a disc ripper. Otherwise, we just mostly use this for helping level up the fields. We don't actually cultivate, since we are no-till / vertical till. Otherwise, there's nothing much to really say about that. It's just a Tiger Mate 40-foot cultivator. So, here's our 1990 750 drill. We bought this brand new back then, and we pulled this. I believe originally we pulled this with the 4650 up until this past 10 years. We actually pulled this now with our 4630. Just because we needed a little bit bigger of a planter on the planter, or a little bit bigger of a tractor on the planter, because of all the precision attachments we started putting on it, and we decided, you know, the 4650 would be a much better suited tractor on the planter than the 4630. So 4630 pulls our 20-foot 750 drill. We just drill wheat and soybeans and the occasional cover crop with this, rye mostly, with sometimes a mix, which includes clover, such as crimson clover, or sweet peas, and there's more, I just can't think of it off the top of my head, rape, and vetch. There's a little bit more, but I just can't remember them all off the top of my head. But anyways, we drill in 7.5-inch spacing. Would I ever want to get a different drill? Yes. The only reason why, this thing is practically shot. We've rebuilt this, I believe, going on 6 times. This year it doesn't need to be rebuilt, but probably in the next 2 years it's going to need to be rebuilt again. So, would I ever want to get a different drill? Yes. And what would I want to get? Probably more than likely a 1990 CSC John Deere 10-inch spacing drill, probably a 30-foot, maybe even a 40-foot. I wouldn't mind having a 40-foot drill. That would actually get the beans done a lot sooner and a lot quicker, since in recent years, guys have discovered, we've also discovered, by planting the beans early in April last year, by seeding them earlier in the season than what you normally would have done, you can actually see a bigger yield benefit. Now, is that always true? Not necessarily, because of the cold snaps and stuff like that in the early spring. But, you take your chances when you always plant early. So that's pretty much it, except for the 9400T. Now, we bought this back in 2007 when we bought the strip till. We actually bought the strip till back in 2006. And we actually pulled it 1 year with the 4650 and found out there's absolutely no way we can actually pull this year in and year out with the 4650. So we went off and bought a 9400T out in Ohio on an auction, online auction I believe, from a dealer, and it has roughly about a little over 5,500 hours on it currently. Has about 425 horse, and not too much to say about this except it's probably one of my favorite tractors, but the tracks are shot on it now. I'm not sure exactly what the plan is, if we're going to replace the tracks this year or next year, but as you can see, the lugs are getting pretty worn down. If you guys have any comments or suggestions on good tracks, I would highly recommend that, just in case we decide to actually put different tracks on this this year or next year, that would be much appreciated. Actually, another thing I could show you guys, we actually did replace the interior last year, part of it, due to an Anchor battery, power battery. You guys might have heard of them, Anchor.com. They actually make portable power banks and other batteries in cables and such. Do I like Anchor? No, not at the moment, really. They actually, the battery actually exploded right here. If you go on my Instagram, I actually have posts back in like November, I believe, of what this actually looked like. But Anchor actually is blaming us for actually leaving the battery in here and causing it to quote unquote explode, and pretty much intentionally. So, not too happy with them right now, and I would not highly recommend them at all. I would advise you to steer clear from them, and I hope this never happens to anybody else, because I was actually afraid of, what would have happened if that battery, since it exploded here and left a huge burned hole and everything in here, what could have happened to the tractor actually, could it really severely damage the tractor? Yeah, it actually could have, it could have been a really bad situation that we might have had, but, stuff like that happens. But, should it have happened? No. Should the company be liable for it? Yeah. But they're not. They're not going to be, I guess. So I would not recommend Anchor, so I would advise you to steer clear from that company. Anyways, moving on. That was pretty much it from the farm tour. I know you guys have been dying to see all of our farm equipment, and that was pretty much it. So, another huge shout. I just wanted to say a huge shout out to American Agriculture. I'm actually wearing the sweatshirt that I bought from him a while back. And if you actually want to check out the rest of his merchandise besides his sweatshirt, go to AmericanAgriculture.com. I'll show his link up here in the video somewhere, and I'll put it down in the description. He actually makes some pretty cool shirts, and sweatshirts and other merchandise. Otherwise, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe down below, and follow me on Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, and don't forget to like, and don't forget to subscribe. almost to 2,000, guys. That'd be pretty awesome if we could hit 2,000. Otherwise, see you guys in the next video.